So buenas noches. I forgot how to say it in Portuguese. Is it? How do you say good evening in Portuguese? Boa noite. Noite. Boa noite. Well, what can I tell you? I'm from Jamaica. I'll just say, wham. Anyway, we have gathered here right now for many of us, something that's a very special part of our conference, and also a part that, for a variety of reasons, requires explanation. As I think through an explanation, what's on my mind is one of the sessions. Many of you today saw me going through taking pictures, and part of that is I help out in the meeting, but in addition to that, as I am the president's helper, I am also trying to make sure a meeting on technologies of liberation also has a social media presence. So I have been tweeting and Facebooking the meeting. But in between, I get to hear some of the sessions, and it's the closest thing I could get to ubiquity at the meeting. And I managed to hear a rather interesting example that is a metaphor of a lot of what we do. Dr. Mabari Kinya, in her presentation, brought up this example. She brought up an example of a woman who, in Kenya, has a separate part of her house with a whole lot of new stoves. And when she went to interview her, and the woman decided to make some tea, she took her to this blocks with the old-style coal stoves, and they sat down for tea. And she was asking, why don't you use these beautiful new stoves? And the woman explained that she gets up in the morning, she cooks for the family, then she goes and she works all day on a farm. A lot of people don't know this, but in most of the world, the actual farmers are women. And after a long day of working, doing farm work, when she comes home, she wants to sit down, talk to her children, communicate with the family, and cook. And the old style enables you to sit down low, have everything at the eye level, and cook, which you can't do with a Western stove, which is designed for you to be standing. So in effect, if one is attuned to the lives of these women, one would need to develop a technology that would work with a social world in which she needs to rest while still cooking, while being with her family at the end of the day. Now, why do I bring up this story? It's because it's an example that exemplifies a lot of what this organization is about. You know, we have shifting the geography of reason. And in shifting the geography of reason is going to be linked to shifting a whole lot of other things. So when we begin with this question, the first thing that we should bear in mind is that there are many people, and many of you have heard Audre Lorde cited. Audre Lorde has this very famous expression about the master's tools cannot tear down the master's house. Now, some people interpreted that in a wrong way. They took it as being anti-theory. If you're using theory, you're using the master's tools. And of course, that led to a form of epistemic dependency, a form of epistemic colonization, because it left theory to be something that Europeans and whites do, and somehow we in the global south, what do? I mean, we become just the experience. However, there's another model, because you see, what people forget is that those houses that those masters had, the masters didn't build them, we did. They forget that it was the creativity of the enslaved, women and men, everything from porch to cotton gin, because let me tell you, being a slave plantation sucks. And so you want to find ways to transform your living condition. You develop technologies of how to make it better. And as these houses were being built, the thing that was missing was they were being built, but not being built for the proverbial us. So another response is that if you begin to focus on tearing down a house, it becomes like saying you hate somebody. If you hate them enough, you love them. If you're going to center that master's house when in fact, perhaps what you should be doing is building a different type of house. Well, a lot of us decided that in the global south, if we're going to build a different house for theory, in other words, theory doesn't float willy-nilly. It is part of a world in which we come together and understand our relationship to thought, because thought, theory, ideas belong to everybody. But if we're going to do it, we realize that what some people would do is the equivalent of going to Kenya and putting a Western stove. In other words, we need to ask if we are going to deal with ideas. And one of the reasons we call this the Caribbean Philosophical Association was not to center the discipline of philosophy. It's just that it forces us to ask, well, what is philosophy and what's its relationship to something bigger than philosophy itself, which is ideas. And if we're going to think about how we're going to deal with these ideas, we begin to realize that we have to do it our way. And this is one of the reasons why you may notice we open our meeting differently. We do a lot of things differently precisely because we take the spirit of seriousness, as existentialists would call it, out of philosophy, out of professional philosophy, out of professional comp lit, out of professional political theory, all of those, and bring it into a framework of realizing that we are the ones responsible not simply for what we say, but also how we say and do it. Now, there's another story I like to tell that brings this issue up even more. Because you see, in shifting the geography of reason, you're also playing a part in shifting the geography of power. Now, we talk about power a lot. We talk about power and knowledge. But you know, there are ways of talking about power and knowledge that obfuscate the concept of power and the concept of knowledge. I often point out that power is about the ability to make things happen. And what's rather fascinating is that a lot of what we do in this organization, and a lot of what a lot of us do when we leave these meetings, is we go out in the world and we make things happen. And we're a community of people, and this is something you've learned in the struggle with Euromodernity, because you see, Euromodernity attempts to be a solipsistic reality that says that is the only way things can happen, which makes Euromodernity the only site of power. However, there's been Afro-modernity, indigenous modernity, Asian modernity. There have been many other kinds of modernities, and in each of them, the project has been resilience, to find alternative ways to make things happen. And when we make these things happen, other things happen precisely because power is a chain reaction. When we started this organization, we didn't know all the things that would emerge. We just knew there were things we had to do. And when we started, there were people telling us it was ridiculous to do what we're doing. In fact, I love to bring up the story because there's one guy who used to say, you shouldn't have a Caribbean Philosophical Association because it'll be imperial. But then he said, well, what should we do? He said, we should do Foucauldian criticism. And I thought, man, that's pretty imperial. And in fact, we said, you know what? We'll be happy if the subsequent generations are overcoming us, because their relationship to us means there has been a shift in the normative, legitimating practices of what it means to think. Think about the fact that there are many of you right now who can start your careers with dissertations on Fanon, C.L.R. James, on Guillén. You could write dissertations on Anna Julia Cooper. You could write dissertations on Claudia Jones. You could write dissertations on Surya Aurobindo. You could write dissertations on Nishitani Kaiji. A lot of us don't realize is connected to the work that many of us in this room have been doing for the past 20 years. Because you see, we were busy building alternative houses. And you know what happens when the master looks around and says, hey, yo, there's nobody in the house? They look around and say, man, check out the party going on over there. And in fact, that is exactly what's been happening. And in fact, the first several years of the organization, there were people who kept saying, why don't you all come and meet at the American Philosophical Association? And our response, they thought, was arrogant. And let me tell you, the best compliment a person of color could get is for white people to call us arrogant. You know why? Because you see, it means you're not subservient. It means you're out of your place. Because the only place that was left for us is not true humility. True humility is admitting what your strengths and weaknesses are. However, the very idea that to assert your dignity, to stand up and say what you do matters, is treated as arrogance, is a sign of the profound level of violence done to our humanity in this age. So our response was, well, maybe the American Philosophical Association could meet down here. And what we've done, is always set up a way to meet with our various communities. Our first time meeting, actually, with an American organization was with the Simone de Beauvoir Society. And the reason is because Beauvoir, as far as we're concerned, is one of us. She was there connected to the struggles in the global South. You'd see even in the work I've written, the impact she has had on Fanon and many others. And in many ways, she also took the risk of doing something that many of us, in our own, now I'll say, humble ways, are trying to do, which is she lived her life. The story I'd like to tell that connects to now the final part before we get to the awards is a story I love to tell because it's connected to the fact that if we're shifting the geography of reason, shifting the geography of power, we're also shifting the geography of freedom. And the freedom story, when we talk about freedom, many people try to break it down and confuse it with liberty, license, absence of obstacles. But I love to talk about freedom in terms of how would somebody in the world of enslavement think about freedom. And the example I love to give is the example from My Bondage and My Freedom and the Life and Times of Frederick Douglass and his mother. Because you see, Frederick Douglass's mother, when he was around 7 years old, would get up, remember she's an enslaved woman, go 12 miles. 12 miles today doesn't sound like much, but if you're going through the woods at night in Maryland and you don't have a collar to say that you're not an escaped slave, she was risking life and limb. She would go to do what? To spend time with Frederick Douglass. And the child, although as we know the practice was to take the child away from the mother, to break the bonds of filial relationships, this woman visited him for 6 months and then she died. Now, one of the things I often ask my students about this is what would you say if your mother, in your experience, if there's a world that told you your mother abandoned you, but then you found out that she risked her life just to spend time with you, although she knew she would never have the rest of her life with you. And what my students often reflect and realize is they would say, my mother loved me. Now, love is something you hear a lot of in theory from the global South. If you go and look at black scholarship in North America, you hear a lot of love. Love's all over the place. And the reason you hear about this is because you see, in a world in which someone like Frederick Douglass was told that he was nothing but property, where his mother was told she was nothing but a thing, property. In Euromodernity, when we're talking about a group of people who are told that we don't even have an inside, a point of view, we're pure externality, just property. That world tells you that your value is only a function of an economy built on property relations. However, love raises the question of another conception of value. It means that someone values you, and if you look at existential love says that if someone loves you, it's not just that they're elated that you exist. Love says you ought to exist, that the world is infinitely less without you in it. However, and this is the crucial part, the real issue at this moment is not the fact that Frederick Douglass's mother loved him. The real issue is whether he valued her love. See, many of us in the global south are pummeled, bullied. We are brought into a conception of value that tells us that it's less valuable to be valued by each other. You're told that if you get a prize from a big foundation in the United States or in Europe, that is more valuable than your fellow people in the global south value you. So part of the issue that Frederick Douglass had to understand, and really think about this, what kind of politics do you have, what kind of ethics do you have, if an enslaved woman, a woman whom a society says is not valued except as exchange value, what are you thinking if you say it's more important to be valued by her than by a system of economic relations that put it in monetary terms or even in legitimation terms, even the Nobel Academy? You see what I'm getting at? So that became part of our mission. You see, even though we reject a lot of other views, we understood the reason we have prizes is not to just people prop up prizes and say, I got a prize, I got a prize. I individually don't think much about prizes. Some of you may not know this, but when I was the first president, I insist in the bylaws that I never receive a prize. Because for me, the important question is how we learn to value others. I value more, all of us, that the community we can prize. So these prizes, although we give them to an individual, they're really about a community acknowledging the importance of valuing each other. You see? And so nothing makes me and many of us happier than not only that the recipients of the prize value them, but the very fact that these prizes, as we see them, are linked to people like Frederick Douglass's mother. They're linked to people like Kugano. They're linked to people like Amo. They're linked to people, all those people that we refer to as les damnés de la terre, the damned of the earth. Precisely because if we're going to build a better house, we need to understand that we need to create better normative foundations. And that means the humanity of those overlooked is what we're also acknowledging in these prizes. So without further ado, I'm going to, on behalf of the community, bestow these prizes. When I announce each one, I'd like the recipient to come up and first just, you could say a small, just, get to say something and sit in the chair, because at the end, we'd like publicly to acknowledge you, okay? And then afterwards, we're going to go to the next session, which is also to acknowledge one of the namesakes of these prizes, who is Frantz Fanon, because this year, Fanon would have been 90 years of age, okay? So we begin with the first prize, and first, of course, here is not hierarchical. We decided that it's very important to begin with a paper, a prize for a paper at the previous year's meeting that, in the opinion of the nominators and then the referees, would be considered the best prize at that meeting. And we decided that prize needed to be named after a real freedom fighter, an intellectual. And remember, in this organization, there's no contradiction between praxis and theory. There's a way in which that we bring them together, and this namesake brought it together very well. So the first one we call this is the first ever Claudia Jones Award for Best Paper by a Graduate Student, presented at, in the previous year, in this case, the 2014 Caribbean Philosophical Association meeting. And the paper was entitled, Can the Subaltern Teach? Towards a New Geoepistemic for the European Age of Crisis. And it goes to Kojo Koram at Birkbeck School of Law. Kojo Koram, could you please come up? Come around. Here it is. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah. Just wanted to say a quick thank you so much to the organization. Such an honor to receive this prize, especially one named after Claudia Jones, who, her credentials, I think, are best described when people talk about where she rests in Highgate Cemetery in London, and she actually is placed on the left of Karl Marx's grave, so people always famously say that she's to the left of Marx. And so, yeah, I really do appreciate it all, and I look forward to being part of this organization, the ongoing conversation for long in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia Jones, by the way, was from Trinidad, for the Trinis in the, where's Kalita? Trini homegirl. The next one, now the next prize we decided we realized because we have book prizes and lifetime achievement prizes, but we should also have a prize for someone very early in her or his career who presents a paper at the organization, and because this is one way to acknowledge essays. But we also decided to, although the namesake of this prize wrote technically 2 books, lots of essays. There are many things about her you don't know. One of the things I love to do is to teach about the namesake of the next prize, Anna Julia Cooper. Anna Julia Cooper, there's so many things. I mean, she was a child prodigy. She was born in slavery. She ended up teaching mathematics at a college while she was a little girl. She did her PhD at the Sorbonne, written on the Haitian Revolution. She's written A Voice from the South. She's written philosophical work. She's one of those people where it's not even, could she have been a black feminist? She was a black feminist in the 19th century. This is a person who thought through ideas so ahead of her time that I'm pretty sure there'll be a future where people are going to try to imagine that some spaceship went to the Earth and planted Anna Julia Cooper there or something. But the things about her is that among her work was she was there at the founding of the Pan-African Congress, and we're hoping that more and more people could go to the next level of understanding of Anna Julia Cooper's work. The first recipient of the Anna Julia Cooper Award wrote a paper that was presented at last year's meeting, and the referees superfluous reports. And so the prize says it's the Anna Julia Cooper Award for Best Paper presented by a beginning scholar at the 2014 Caribbean Philosophical Association International Conference. And the paper that won the prize was entitled The Ambiguities of Privilege and Identity in the Work of Simone de Beauvoir. It was written by Dr. Jina Fast. Would you please come up, Dr. Jina Fast?
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Louis and Jane. I love coming here every year. It's almost a relief over the summer to listen to great papers, to have such great dialogue, and it feels like something really different. It feels very invigorating to then go back at the beginning of the fall semester, back to our students, back to our universities, and to have had that opportunity to share. So I just feel really grateful, both for this award and just for being part of this every single year. Thank you.
Professor Frieda Ekotto, could you come up, please? Oh, there you are. One of the things that's funny, too, about the Caribbean Philosophical Association, and I should give you a little extra history before we move to the next series of prizes, was about 18 years ago, I was organizing some meetings for the American Philosophical Association, and something happened, which was that every session I organized looked like this room. In fact, there were sessions sometimes where there would be 200 people in what would be the satellite one for the Radical Philosophy Association, and people were wondering what's going on. And then it struck me, why am I doing it for the American Philosophical Association? And so we began to get together and do things in other parts of the world that led to this organization. But there's something crucial for you to bear in mind. It really isn't that hard to get a community like this to assemble around ideas. It really isn't. Because ideas, excellence, commitment to ideas is diverse. It takes a lot of work to make sure this room becomes exclusively white and exclusively male. And this should tell you something. It means that if you look at the dominating organizations that become that way, they're not that way by accident. Actually, what we're doing is actually breaking down the barriers. Because many of you are here, you're here because you're excited and you're passionate, because this is a place you can present your ideas. And I say this precisely because when we look for books, and we're moving now to the book awards, we look for books where people go out there and present their ideas. We're not looking for people who are trying to be carbon copies of the orthodoxies. And so right now, I wanted, for a variety of reasons, to have last year's winner of the big scholar Guillén Award to be able to present the Guillén Book Award this year. And the Guillén Award, for some of you, and just to let you know, some of you may not know, is the award for philosophical literature. And Guillén was a poet, philosophical poet from Cuba. And I mention this right now because we do plan in the future, many of you may know, we had a fabulous summer school this year where we have Fanon Award winners. In the future, we're planning a Guillén Winter School in Cuba where we'll have Guillén winners involved. But without further ado, I'd like Frieda Ekotto to take the stand for the next awardee.
Thank you. What a wonderful, okay. Thank you, Louis. I also want to say I really enjoyed what you said. I think it's important to remind us why we're here. So I really enjoyed that. I'm so honored to be able to give this award to one of my former students. Now he's a colleague of mine, and I'm even going so far as trying to hire her at the University of Michigan. I'm working on that because I think she's a fantastic scholar. And this book she wrote called Creole Renegades, Rhetoric of Guilt and Betrayal in the Caribbean Diaspora is a wonderful book because precisely Bénédicte in her book, she shifts the center. I mean, it's no longer Europe, she shows that the center should be in the Caribbean. So I think, this is a great honor. Please come up, Professor Bénédicte Boisseron.
And we should read out what the award says. And what the award says is the 2015 Nicolás Guillén Award for the Outstanding Book in Philosophical Literature to Bénédicte Boisseron for Creole Renegades, Rhetorics of Betrayal and Guilt in the Caribbean Diaspora by the University of Florida Press, 2014.
Hello. I would like to thank the association, Jane, Louis, and Rosario. I've been ecstatic since I found out about the award. Writing a book is a very lonely and rewarding experience, and it feels very special to share that moment with all of you guys. And even more so, I would like to thank Frieda, who is the one who made the process of writing much less lonely by sharing thoughts with me since I started everything. So thank you, Frieda. Thank you, everybody.
We now go to the Frantz Fanon Awards. Oh, no, not yet. It's the awards. We have two Frantz Fanon book awards this year. One of the things I should let you know about these awards is the committee who consists of laureates voting for the awards. And the process is we're sent books, and then I send them to referees, I get the reports, then I send the reports to the laureates in the committee, and they put in their votes, and we take it from there. And sometimes we only give one, and sometimes we give two, sometimes we give three. This year, as you can see with the Guillén, we gave one, and this year there are two Fanon Award winners, book award winners. So, The 2015 Frantz Fanon Outstanding Book Award goes to José, Guadalupe, Gandarilla, Salgado 4, Asedios a la Totalidad, Poder y Política en la Modernidad desde un encare, sorry if I'm butchering Spanish, de Colonial by UNAM 2012. Señor. Felicitaciones. Well, you can talk first.
My English is not so good. I prefer
Español.
speak in Spanish.
¿Cómo?
Agradezco mucho la ocasión a los organizadores. Agradezco mucho a los organizadores todo el empeño que han puesto para que esta conferencia haya salido muy bien, esté saliendo muy bien. Para Luis, para Jane, para Rosario, muchas gracias. Es un gran honor para cualquiera y en este caso que a mí me corresponda, como en esta situación siendo local, que de algún modo u otro el nombre de uno esté ligado al de este gigante del pensamiento y de la práctica social que es Frantz Fanon. Agradezco entonces a los que nos acompañan. El libro que es premiado en esta ocasión, yo lo escribí y se lo dediqué en su momento a mi hijo, y de algún modo u otro es una especie de metáfora también de la geografía de la razón.
So the book in this case, the book is one of the prizes I dedicated to my son, which represents the metaphor.
Porque él en este momento no está acá, pero de algún modo u otro es mi razón también.
He's in here right now, but I'm saying he'll be my reason.
Así que muchas gracias a todos ustedes.
The next book award winner. It's interesting when one is teaching somebody's work, and you get to a moment where their work come before you for a prize. In my courses on African political philosophy, there are courses on political philosophy generally. The next recipient's name pops up often. And when the book was nominated, that was one of those moments where, you say, yes. But then, of course, it has to go through the whole process. And then it was very interesting. With us, we had this unanimous thing with the books of yes. And so without further ado, the 2015 Frantz Fanon Outstanding Book Award, bless you, goes, not to bless you, but bless you, to Olúfẹ Táíwò for How Colonialism Preempted Modernity in Africa, published by Indiana University Press in 2010. You have a 5-year window of opportunity to win the award. You just made it.
Good evening, everybody. Those who know me know that there are very few situations in which I'm at a loss for words. This is one of them. The reason is very simple. When I got the news of the award, it was amazing because I got the email on the 1st of January. I opened my email in Nigeria, and I got this email from Lou Godin. And when I opened it, I said, what's going on? The book was published in 2010. And then I emailed him right away, I didn't even know you had a window. And that's just wonderful. And I'll tell you why this is significant to me beyond words. First, it's coming from my community. It's coming from the people that I wanted to address when I wrote the book. I always remind people, I don't care about the honorifics or the philosophy profession. I did not when I was a junior scholar. It's too late for me to care about it. I want to talk to people who are really interested in arguing about the things that matter to us beyond what the gatekeepers are interested in. By giving this book the prize, what you have done is to tell me that I made the right choice in terms of how I chose to conduct my way in this racket that we call academia. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. Thank you very much.